The massive transport ship descended through the purple clouds of Volantis Prime, carrying students from across 17 different star systems. Among the hundreds of alien species aboard, there was only one human. His name was Marcus Cole, and he was about to become the first Terran ever accepted into the prestigious Galactic Warrior Academy. Marcus pressed his face against the viewing window, watching the alien world grow larger beneath them. The academy itself was visible now, a sprawling complex of silver towers and floating platforms that stretched across an entire mountain range. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. "You are the Terran," a voice said from behind him. Marcus turned to find a creature standing there. It was tall, perhaps 8 feet, with blue scaled skin and 4 arms. Its eyes were completely black, like pools of oil, and they studied Marcus with obvious curiosity. "I am Zethros of the Kelvani Empire," the creature continued. "I have read about your species. You come from a death world, yes? A planet so hostile that most species could not survive there for even a single rotation." Marcus nodded slowly. "Earth has its challenges, I suppose." Zethros made a sound that might have been laughter. "Challenges? Your planet has extreme temperature variations, violent weather patterns, massive predators, toxic plant life, and your own sun bombards you with harmful radiation. The fact that any intelligent life evolved there is considered a statistical impossibility by most galactic scientists." "We adapted," Marcus said simply. "Indeed." Zethros leaned closer, studying Marcus like he was some kind of specimen. "I am curious to see how a creature from such a primitive world will perform at the Academy. The training is designed for species with actual biological advantages: superior strength, enhanced senses, natural armor, regenerative abilities. What do humans have?" Marcus thought about the question for a moment. Back on Earth, he had been a soldier. He had served in difficult conditions, fought in conflicts that tested every limit of his body and mind. But compared to the beings around him, he knew he was physically outclassed. The Kelvani alone were 3 times his size and possessed strength that could crush stone. "I guess we will find out," Marcus answered. The transport landed with a gentle thump, and the passengers began filing out onto a massive platform. Marcus grabbed his single bag and joined the crowd. All around him, incredible creatures moved toward the academy entrance. He saw beings made of living crystal, creatures that seemed to exist partially out of phase with normal reality, warriors covered in natural bone armor, and predators with claws that could slice through metal. And then there was him. One human, average height. No claws, no armor, no special abilities, just soft skin, relatively weak muscles, and a brain that had evolved to help his ancestors avoid being eaten by large cats. The welcome ceremony took place in a massive arena. Thousands of new students gathered while the academy instructors stood on a raised platform above them. The head instructor was a creature called Vorath, a member of the Zentari species known throughout the galaxy for their warrior traditions. Vorath was covered in thick gray hide, had 6 legs, and stood nearly 12 feet tall. His voice boomed across the arena without any amplification. "You have all been selected because you represent the finest potential warriors your species can offer," Vorath announced. "Over the next 3 cycles, you will be tested, trained, and transformed. Many of you will fail. Some of you may die. Only the strongest will graduate and earn the right to serve in the Galactic Defense Force." Marcus felt eyes on him from all directions. He was clearly the subject of curiosity, perhaps even amusement. He heard whispers in languages his translator could only partially understand. Words like weak and mistake and already dead reached his ears. "This cycle's class includes representatives from 47 species," Vorath continued, "including, for the first time in Academy history, a human from the Sol system." The arena fell silent. Every eye, sensor, and sensory organ turned toward Marcus. He stood perfectly still, refusing to show any reaction. The Terran species was only contacted 12 standard years ago, Vorath explained. They are new to the galactic community and have not yet proven themselves in any significant capacity. However, they submitted an application through proper channels, and after much debate, it was decided that one human would be given the opportunity to demonstrate their species' potential. Vorath's massive head turned directly toward Marcus. Terran, step forward. Marcus walked through the crowd, which parted easily around him. He climbed the steps to the platform and stood before the enormous instructor. Up close, Vorath was even more intimidating. His hide was scarred from countless battles, and his eyes held the cold calculation of a natural predator. "You are smaller than the report suggested," Vorath observed. "Tell me, human, why do you believe you deserve a place at this academy?" Marcus met the instructor's gaze without flinching. "Because I was chosen to represent my people, and I will not let them down." Admirable words, but words mean nothing here. Only actions matter. Vorath gestured to the crowd below. Every student here possesses biological advantages that make them natural warriors. The Kelvani have 4 arms and strength that can bend starship hull plating. The Crystalli can regenerate from almost any wound. The Vorathian shadow hunters can become invisible at will. What advantage do humans possess? Marcus thought carefully before answering. "We do not give up." A ripple of something that might have been laughter moved through the crowd. Vorath's expression did not change. "Stubbornness is not a survival trait," the instructor said. "It is often a path to faster death." "With respect, sir, I disagree. On my world, we have a saying, 'It is not the size of the dog in the fight, but the size of the fight in the dog.'" What is a dog? A small predator that humans domesticated long ago. They are loyal, persistent, and will defend their pack against enemies many times their size. Vorath considered this for a long moment. "We shall see if human persistence is enough to survive what lies ahead. Return to your place, Terran. Training begins tomorrow at first light." Marcus descended from the platform and made his way back through the crowd. He noticed that the other students were keeping more distance from him now. Whether out of respect, pity, or simply not wanting to associate with the weakling who would surely fail, he could not tell. The barracks were divided by species compatibility, and Marcus was assigned to a section with other oxygen-breathing species of similar size. His roommates were a Selvari named Kira, who had silver fur and sharp teeth evolved for hunting on her homeworld, and a Dracon named Thex, a reptilian being with natural armor plates and a tail that could strike with enough force to shatter bone. "So you are the famous human," Kira said as Marcus entered the room and found his assigned sleeping area. "I expected something more impressive." "Sorry to disappoint," Marcus replied, setting down his bag. Thex observed him with cold, reptilian eyes. "I watched a documentary about your species before coming here. You kill each other in massive numbers. You destroy your own environment. You create weapons capable of ending all life on your planet, and then you continue creating more. Either humans are completely insane, or there is something about your species that the documentary did not explain." "Probably both," Marcus admitted. Kira made a sound of surprise. "You admit to insanity?" "I admit that humans are complicated. We have done terrible things to each other and to our world, but we have also done incredible things. We have climbed our highest mountains, explored our deepest oceans, and left our planet to walk on our moon. When we face challenges, we do not stop until we overcome them or die trying." "Die trying," Thex repeated. "That seems likely in your case. The academy training is designed to push species to their biological limits. Your limits appear to be significantly lower than everyone else here." Marcus began unpacking his few belongings. "Maybe, but I have been underestimated before." The first day of training began before sunrise. The students were awakened by a sound that seemed to vibrate through every cell in their bodies. Marcus was already awake. He had been unable to sleep well, his mind racing with thoughts about what lay ahead. The initial assessment was designed to establish baseline capabilities for each student. Physical strength, speed, endurance, sensory acuity, reaction time, and dozens of other metrics were measured and recorded. Marcus watched as student after student performed feats that would be considered superhuman on Earth. A Kelvani lifted a weight that must have been several tons. A Crystalli allowed itself to be cut in half, only to regenerate completely within minutes. A Shadow Hunter disappeared entirely from sight, reappearing on the other side of the testing arena. When Marcus's turn came, the instructors seemed almost apologetic. "The human will now demonstrate strength capacity," an assistant announced. Marcus approached the lifting mechanism. The weights had been adjusted to what the system calculated would be appropriate for his species. He gripped the handles, set his stance, and lifted. The weight rose smoothly. He held it for the required time, then set it down. "Adequate," the assistant noted. "Human baseline strength confirmed, significantly below galactic average." The tests continued. In every category, Marcus scored near the bottom of the class. His strength was inferior. His speed was average at best. His senses were laughably limited compared to species that could see in multiple spectrums or hear sounds across vast distances. His skin offered no protection. He could not regenerate. He could not turn invisible. He could not project energy or manipulate matter with his mind. By the end of the assessment, his overall ranking was displayed for everyone to see. Out of 3,200 students, Marcus Cole ranked 3,197. "Not even last," Kira observed that evening in the barracks. "That is something, I suppose." "The 8 students ranked below him have medical conditions that will likely result in their dismissal," Thex added helpfully. "Essentially, among functional students, the human is worst." Marcus sat on his bed looking at the ranking data on his personal display. The numbers did not lie. By every measurable standard, he was the weakest student at the academy. Common sense said he should accept defeat now and return home before the real training began. But common sense had never been humanity's strongest trait. "The assessment measured what we can do," Marcus said quietly. "It did not measure what we are willing to do. It did not measure how much we can endure. It did not measure our ability to adapt, to learn, to improve. Those things cannot compensate for fundamental biological limitations," Thex said reasonably. Marcus looked at his roommates. "On my world, there is a story about a race between a fast animal and a slow animal. Everyone expected the fast one to win easily. But the slow one never stopped moving forward while the fast one became overconfident and lazy. In the end, the slow one won." Kira shook her head. "That story makes no logical sense. Speed is speed. Genetics do not change based on attitude." "You are right," Marcus admitted. "But the story is not about genetics. It is about something else entirely, something that cannot be measured in an assessment." He turned off his display and lay down on his bed. "Tomorrow, we start actual training. I suggest we all get some rest." Kira and Thex exchanged glances but said nothing more. The human was clearly delusional, but he would learn the truth soon enough. The academy had broken warriors far stronger than him. In the darkness, Marcus stared at the ceiling. He knew what the others thought of him. He knew the statistics were not in his favor. Every rational analysis suggested he would fail. But humans had never been particularly good at listening to rational analysis. He closed his eyes and slept. Tomorrow would be the first real day of training. Tomorrow would be the first opportunity to show them what humanity was made of. And tomorrow would be the beginning of a legend that would spread across the entire galaxy. The combat training arena was a massive structure that could simulate almost any environment in the known galaxy. On this particular morning, it had been configured to represent a dense forest with low visibility and uneven terrain. The students stood at the entrance, receiving their instructions from a Zentari combat instructor named Braxis. "Today's exercise is simple," Braxis announced. "You will navigate through the simulation zone and reach the extraction point on the far side. Along the way, you will encounter obstacles and simulated enemies. Your performance will be graded on speed, efficiency, and combat effectiveness. You will go one at a time. The current fastest time belongs to a Kelvani student who completed the course in 4 minutes and 32 seconds. Marcus watched as students entered the arena and emerged on the other side, their times displayed on massive screens for everyone to see. The top performers were impressive, moving through the forest like natural predators. Some used their superior strength to simply push through obstacles. Others used speed to blur past enemies before they could react. A few used special abilities like invisibility or energy projection to completely dominate the course. When Marcus's turn came, he stepped into the forest simulation. The trees around him looked and felt completely real. The sounds of alien wildlife filled the air. Somewhere ahead, simulated enemies were waiting. He began moving forward, not with the explosive speed of the faster species, but with careful, measured steps. He used the trees for cover, moved quietly through the underbrush, and stopped frequently to listen and observe. The first enemy appeared ahead, a holographic projection of a hostile alien with a weapon raised. Marcus did not charge it directly. Instead, he circled around, using the terrain to stay hidden, and approached from behind. He neutralized the target with a precise strike before it could react. He continued through the course this way, taking his time, using strategy instead of raw power. When he encountered obstacles too large to push through, he found ways around them. When he faced enemies too strong to confront directly, he used the environment to create advantages. His completion time was 18 minutes and 43 seconds. It was one of the slowest times of the day. "Interesting approach," Braxis commented as Marcus exited the arena. "Unconventional tactics, but ultimately inefficient. You would be dead long before reaching your objective in a real combat scenario." "With respect, sir," Marcus replied, "I did not die in the simulation. I completed the objective." "Yes, but 4 times slower than necessary. In real combat, speed saves lives. Allies could have died while you were being careful." Marcus nodded, accepting the criticism. But part of him wondered if the instructor was missing something. Speed was valuable, certainly, but recklessness had killed more soldiers throughout human history than caution ever had. The weeks that followed pushed every student to their limits. Combat training, weapons proficiency, tactical planning, physical conditioning, survival skills, and dozens of other subjects filled every waking hour. Marcus struggled in many areas where his physical limitations put him at a clear disadvantage. But something strange began to happen. In endurance tests, Marcus performed better than expected, not because he was faster or stronger, but because he simply refused to stop. During one particular exercise, students were required to carry heavy packs across a brutal mountain terrain. The stronger species completed the course quickly, but many collapsed from exhaustion after crossing the finish line. Marcus took nearly twice as long as the average time, but when he crossed the finish line, he was still standing. His body ached, his muscles screamed, but he remained on his feet. "The human is still functional," observed one instructor with obvious surprise. "His species appears to have unusual resistance to fatigue." What the instructor did not understand was that humans had evolved as persistence hunters. Their ancestors had chased prey across African plains for hours and days until the faster animals simply collapsed from exhaustion. It was not a dramatic ability, nothing as impressive as super strength or regeneration, but it had allowed humans to survive and eventually dominate their planet. In survival training, Marcus demonstrated knowledge that surprised his classmates. He could identify edible plants in alien environments by understanding the basic principles of nutrition and toxicity. He could create fire using primitive methods when technology failed. He could construct shelter from available materials. He could navigate by observing natural phenomena. "How do you know these things?" Kira asked one night after Marcus had successfully started a fire during a wilderness survival exercise, while several other students struggled with their high-tech ignition devices. "Humans lived without technology for most of our existence," Marcus explained. "We had to learn to survive with nothing but our intelligence and our hands. Those skills never completely left us." "But you have technology now? Why maintain primitive knowledge?" Marcus fed another stick into the growing flame. "Because technology can fail. Environments can change. What cannot be taken away is knowledge. What you learn, what you understand, stays with you regardless of circumstances." The other students began to notice something else about the human. When group exercises went wrong, Marcus remained calm. When unexpected problems arose, he adapted quickly. When situations became chaotic, he found ways to impose order. During one tactical exercise, a squad of students was ambushed by a simulated enemy force that outnumbered them significantly. The squad leader, a Drakon named Vortis, was immediately disabled by enemy fire. The remaining students began to panic, their superior abilities becoming useless as fear and confusion took over. Marcus moved without hesitation. He pulled 2 injured students to cover, identified the enemy positions, and began issuing orders. His voice cut through the chaos with a calm authority that seemed completely inappropriate for someone of his status. "Crystalli, left flank. Your regeneration makes you ideal for drawing fire. Kelvani, use those 4 arms to provide suppressing fire while I move to higher ground. Shadowhunter, go invisible and circle behind them. Everyone else, focus on defensive positions and wait for my signal." The other students hesitated for only a moment before following his commands. Within minutes, the ambush had been neutralized. The squad completed their objective with only minor simulated casualties. After the exercise, Instructor Braxis reviewed the performance data with obvious interest. "Explain your actions, Terran," Braxis demanded. "You assumed command without authorization. You ignored standard protocols. You used unconventional tactics that had no precedent in our training manuals." "The squad leader was down," Marcus replied. "Someone needed to make decisions quickly, or we all would have failed. I saw opportunities that our training had not prepared us for, so I created a new approach." "Where did you learn to command in combat situations?" "Experience, sir. My species has been fighting wars among ourselves for our entire recorded history. We have learned many things about combat leadership through painful trial and error." Braxis studied the human for a long moment. "Your species fights wars against itself?" "Constantly. We have fought over territory, resources, ideology, religion, and sometimes for reasons that made no sense at all. It is not something we are proud of, but it has taught us much about the nature of conflict. And this makes you qualified to lead warriors from species that are individually superior to humans in every measurable way." Marcus met the instructor's gaze. "Leadership is not about being the strongest or the fastest. It is about understanding the situation, making good decisions under pressure, and earning the trust of those who follow you. None of those things require biological superiority." The word spread through the academy. The human, the weakest student by every standard measurement, had taken command of a mixed squad and led them to victory using nothing but tactics and sheer nerve. Not everyone was impressed. A group of Kelvani students confronted Marcus in the training hall several days later. Their leader was a massive warrior named Draxis, who had been competing for the top ranking in his class. "You think you are special, Terran?" Draxis growled, his 4 arms flexed and ready. "You think leading one exercise makes you worthy of standing among true warriors?" Marcus did not back away. even though Draxus could have crushed him with minimal effort. I do not think I am special. I think I completed an exercise successfully. Nothing more. Your species is weak, fragile. You do not belong here. The only reason you are still at this academy is because the instructors want to study you like some kind of curiosity. When the real tests come, you will fail and prove that humans are nothing. Maybe, Marcus admitted. Or maybe you are wrong. Either way, threatening me in a hallway does not prove anything about either of our species. Draxus leaned closer, his massive form casting Marcus in shadow. I could break every bone in your body right now, and there is nothing you could do to stop me. You are correct, Marcus agreed. But you will not do that, because it would result in your expulsion from the academy. And if you did break my bones, I would heal. And when I healed, I would find a way to repay you. Not through superior strength, because I do not have that. Through other means. Means that your strength could not protect you from. Is that a threat? It is a statement of fact. Humans are very creative when it comes to revenge. It is one of our less admirable qualities. But it is real nonetheless. Draxus stared at the human for a long moment. Something in Marcus's eyes, some quality that had nothing to do with physical strength, gave the Kelvani pause. Finally, he stepped back. We will see how confident you are when the survival trials begin, Draxus said. No tactics or clever words will save you then. Only the strong survive. He turned and walked away, his followers trailing behind him. Kira appeared at Marcus's side. That was either very brave or very stupid. Those are often the same thing, Marcus replied. The survival trials were legendary throughout the galaxy. Once every cycle, the Academy selected a hostile planet and dropped students there with minimal equipment. They were expected to survive for 30 rotations while completing various objectives. Many students were injured. Some died. It was the ultimate test of everything they had learned. Marcus spent the days before the trials studying everything he could about the designated planet. It was called Zerath 7. A world with extreme conditions, dangerous wildlife, and limited resources. Perfect for testing warriors to their limits. His roommates watched him prepare with a mixture of concern and curiosity. You know you do not have to do this, Kira said. Many students request exemption from the survival trials. Given your physical limitations, no one would think less of you for sitting this one out. I would think less of myself, Marcus replied without looking up from his studies. Your stubborn refusal to accept reality is going to get you killed. Marcus finally looked at her. Kira, my species evolved on a planet that tried to kill us every single day. We survived ice ages, predators, diseases, famines, and countless other disasters. We did not survive by being the strongest or the fastest. We survived by being too stubborn to die. That is not a survival strategy. That is a death wish with extra steps. Maybe, but it has worked for us so far. Thex had been silent through this exchange, but now he spoke. I have continued researching your species. There is a concept in human history called last stands. Battles where small groups of humans fought against overwhelming odds with no chance of victory. Yes, Marcus confirmed. We have many stories like that. The interesting thing is that humans celebrate these last stands. You build monuments to them. You tell stories about them. You consider the warriors who died in hopeless battles to be heroes. We do. Thex's reptilian eyes showed something that might have been confusion. Why? They lost. They died. By any logical measure, they failed completely. Marcus was quiet for a moment before answering. Because they showed what humans are capable of when everything seems hopeless. They inspired others who came after them. Sometimes the act of refusing to surrender, even when surrender is the only logical option, changes the course of history. It is not about winning the individual battle, It is about something larger. What could be larger than survival? The survival of what you believe in. The survival of your people, your principles, your way of life. Some things are worth dying for. Thex and Kira exchanged glances. The human made no logical sense to them. But there was something in his words, some conviction that could not be measured or quantified, that made them wonder if maybe there was more to humanity than the assessment data suggested. The night before the survival trials began, Marcus lay awake in his bed. He knew what waited for him on Zerath 7. He knew that the odds were against him surviving. He knew that many people, including some of his instructors, expected him to fail. But failure was only certain if you accepted it in your mind first. Marcus had not come to the academy to fail. He had come to prove something, not just to the aliens who doubted humans, but to himself. He had come to show that the human spirit, that intangible quality that had carried his species through countless impossible situations, was real and powerful. Tomorrow, the real test would begin, and Marcus Cole was ready to show the galaxy what one Terran warrior could do. The drop pods screamed through the atmosphere of Zerath 7, depositing students across hundreds of kilometers of hostile terrain. Marcus felt the brutal impact as his pod slammed into the ground. He took a moment to catch his breath, then activated the release mechanism and stepped out into an alien world. The air was thick and carried a bitter chemical smell. The sky overhead was a sickly yellow color, and the vegetation around him was dark and twisted. According to his studies, the plants on Zerath 7 were mostly toxic. The water sources were contaminated with heavy metals, and the wildlife included several apex predators that viewed anything smaller than themselves as potential food. Standard survival equipment had been provided. A basic knife, a water purification tablet container, a thermal blanket, and a beacon that would activate automatically if the wearer's vital signs dropped below survivable levels. Everything else had to be found, created, or improvised. Marcus checked his orientation and began moving toward the first objective marker. The trials were structured around a series of checkpoints scattered across the landscape. Students earned points by reaching these checkpoints while also earning additional points for combat encounters, resource gathering, and helping other students in distress. The first 3 days were difficult but manageable. Marcus established a base camp in a defensible location, found a water source that his purification tablets could treat, and identified several plant species that were safe to eat after proper preparation. He moved carefully through the landscape, avoiding confrontation with the larger predators and conserving his energy for the long trial ahead. On the 4th day, everything changed. A massive storm system moved across the region with terrifying speed. The wind became so powerful that trees were ripped from the ground. The rain was acidic enough to cause burns on exposed skin. Lightning struck the landscape with devastating frequency. Marcus found shelter in a narrow cave system and waited for the storm to pass. But the storm did not pass. It continued for 3 full rotations, trapping him underground with limited supplies and no way to continue toward the objectives. By the time the weather cleared, many students had already been evacuated due to injuries or equipment failures. The trials continued, but the competition had become significantly smaller. Marcus emerged from his shelter weak and hungry but alive. He oriented himself and resumed his journey toward the next checkpoint. Along the way, he found evidence of other students, abandoned campsites, discarded equipment, and in one disturbing case, bloodstains that suggested a fatal encounter with local wildlife. On the 8th day, he heard sounds of combat in the distance. His training told him to avoid unnecessary risk. His ranking in the trials was decent, and getting involved in unknown situations could result in injury or death. The logical choice was to continue toward his objective and leave whatever was happening to others. But logic had never been the only thing driving Marcus. He moved toward the sounds, using the terrain for cover as he approached. What he found was a desperate scene. A group of 5 students, including Kira and a badly injured Kelvani, were surrounded by a pack of predators that looked like a nightmare combination of wolves and insects. The creatures were fast, vicious, and clearly hunting as a coordinated unit. The students were holding their ground, but the Kelvani was bleeding badly from multiple wounds, and the others were exhausted. It was only a matter of time before the predators found an opening. Marcus assessed the situation quickly. He counted 12 predators in the pack. The students had defensive positions but were unable to break free without leaving the injured Kelvani behind. A direct assault by Marcus alone would be suicide. But maybe a direct assault was not necessary. He searched the area and found what he was looking for: a rocky outcropping above the clearing, unstable and covered with loose debris. It was risky, almost certainly stupid, and went against everything the Academy had taught about calculated risk assessment. It was also the kind of plan that humans had been executing successfully for thousands of years. Marcus climbed the rocks quietly, staying out of sight of the predators below. When he reached the top, he began pushing loose stones toward the edge. The noise attracted attention from the pack, but before they could react, Marcus triggered a small avalanche that came crashing down into the clearing. The predators scattered in confusion, several of them injured by falling rocks. The students used the distraction to grab their wounded companion and retreat. Marcus scrambled down a different path, circling around to join them. Kira stared at him with a mixture of shock and gratitude. "You could have been killed doing that. I was careful." "You dropped half a mountain on a pack of predators. That is not careful by any definition." The injured Kelvani, whose name was Joran, looked at Marcus with something approaching reverence. "You saved us. A human saved us." "I helped," Marcus corrected. "You were already holding them off. I just changed the situation." They made camp together that night, sharing resources and taking turns on watch. Joran's wounds were severe, but Marcus used techniques from human first aid training to stabilize him until proper medical treatment could be arranged. "Where did you learn this?" asked Vesh, a shadow hunter who had been part of the surrounded group. "Your academy training did not include medical procedures this advanced. Human military training includes basic field medicine," Marcus explained. "Where I come from, soldiers are expected to be able to treat wounds when professional medical help is not available." "Your species trains all soldiers in medical care?" "Most of them. We have a saying, 'Every soldier is a medic first.'" The group continued together for the next several days. Their combined skills made survival easier, and Marcus found that his role naturally evolved into something like a coordinator. He was not the strongest or the fastest, but he saw connections between things that others missed. He noticed patterns in the environment and predicted problems before they became critical. He found solutions that leveraged each team member's unique abilities. On the 15th day, they encountered Draxus and his group of Kelvani warriors. The meeting was tense. Draxus clearly had not forgotten his previous confrontation with Marcus, and his expression showed contempt for the mixed group traveling with a human. "Still alive, Terran? I am surprised." "Life is full of surprises," Marcus replied calmly. Draxus looked at the others in Marcus's group. "You travel with the weakling? You let him make decisions for you?" Joran, still recovering from his injuries, spoke up. "The human saved my life. He risked himself to protect students who were not even from his species. What have you done besides look for easy objectives and avoid real challenges?" The accusation struck home. Draxus's face twisted with anger, and for a moment it seemed like violence was inevitable. Then the ground began to shake. The tremors grew stronger rapidly, and the landscape itself began to change. Trees fell, rocks split apart, and a massive creature emerged from beneath the surface. It was enormous, easily 50 meters long, covered in armored plates, and apparently very unhappy about the presence of students on its territory. Both groups scattered as the creature attacked. Its movements were surprisingly fast for something so large, and its armored body seemed impervious to the weapons the students carried. In the chaos, Marcus found himself separated from the others. He was trapped in a narrow canyon with the creature blocking the only exit. There was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. The monster turned toward him, its multiple eyes focusing on the tiny human that dared to stand in its path. This was it. The moment every other species had predicted. The moment when human weakness would finally catch up with Marcus Cole. The creature lunged, and Marcus moved. Not fast enough to outrun the beast, not strong enough to fight it directly, but smart enough to have noticed the unstable rock formation above the canyon entrance during his first glance around, smart enough to have positioned himself exactly where the creature would have to charge in a straight line, smart enough to know that timing and precision could sometimes accomplish what strength and speed could not. He threw his knife at exactly the right angle, striking the one loose stone that held the formation together. The rocks came crashing down just as the creature passed beneath them, burying its head under tons of debris. The massive body thrashed and struggled, but the weight was too much. Within minutes, the creature stopped moving. Marcus stood among the settling dust, breathing heavily, his body shaking from adrenaline and exhaustion. He had survived. Against every prediction, against every logical assessment of his abilities, he had survived. The other students emerged from their hiding places and stared at the scene in disbelief. The human, the weakest warrior in the academy, had just killed a creature that their combined might could not have scratched. Draxus approached slowly, his expression unreadable. For a long moment he simply looked at Marcus, and then at the buried beast. "How?" the Kelvani finally asked. "How did you do that?" Marcus looked at his hands, still trembling. "I saw an opportunity. I took it. No creature sees an opportunity like that. No warrior thinks that quickly under pressure, not without training that takes lifetimes to develop." "Maybe humans think differently than other species," Marcus said. "We evolved on a world where everything was trying to kill us. We could not outrun predators. We could not outfight them. So we learned to outthink them. We learned to use the environment itself as a weapon." Draxus was silent for a long time. When he spoke again, his voice had lost all trace of contempt. "I was wrong about your species. I thought strength was the measure of a warrior. I thought biological superiority determined who was worthy and who was not. But you have shown me something different today, something that cannot be measured in an assessment." "What is that?" Draxus met Marcus's eyes with what might have been respect. "The will to survive against any odds, the ability to find victory in situations where victory should be impossible, the refusal to accept defeat even when every fact says you have already lost." He paused. "Humans call it something, do they not? A word for this quality?" Marcus nodded slowly. "We call it being human." The survival trials ended 3 days later. The final rankings were announced in the same massive arena where the welcome ceremony had taken place. The head instructor, Vorath, stood on the raised platform, reviewing the performance data for the entire academy to see. The survival trials on Zerath 7 were among the most difficult in academy history, Vorath announced. 37% of students required evacuation. 12 students died from injuries or environmental factors. The completion rate was the lowest we have recorded in 50 cycles. The arena was silent as the rankings were displayed. The top-performing student in the survival trials, with a combination of survival points, objective completions, combat effectiveness, and successful rescue operations, is... Vorath paused, his expression showing something that might have been surprise. Marcus Cole of Earth, the human. The silence became absolute. Marcus stood among his fellow students, unable to fully process what he was hearing. He had not just survived the trials. He had won them. Against species with every biological advantage, against warriors who had been bred and engineered for combat, a single human had achieved the highest score. Vorath continued. During the trials, the Terran demonstrated skills that no assessment could have predicted. Strategic thinking, environmental awareness, leadership under pressure, and an unwillingness to abandon allies even at personal risk. These qualities were deemed more valuable than raw physical capability by our scoring algorithms. The instructor turned his massive head directly toward Marcus. "Step forward, Terran." Marcus walked through the crowd, which parted for him with a deference that was entirely new. He climbed the stairs to the platform and stood before Vorath as he had on the first day, but everything was different now. "When you arrived at this academy, I asked what advantage humans possessed," Vorath said. "You told me that your species does not give up. At the time, I dismissed this as naive sentiment. I believed that persistence could not compensate for fundamental weaknesses." He lowered his head until his eyes were level with Marcus. "I was wrong. The human spirit, the capacity to continue fighting when all logic says to surrender, is not a weakness. It is the most dangerous weapon in the galaxy. Any species can be outfought. Any defense can be broken. But how do you defeat an enemy who refuses to accept defeat? How do you conquer a people who will not stop resisting no matter how many times they are knocked down?" Marcus did not know how to respond. He had come to the academy hoping simply to survive, to prove that humans deserved a place among the galactic community. He had never expected to become an example of anything. "The Galactic Defense Force has monitored your progress throughout the trials," Vorath continued. "They have reached a conclusion that will change humanity's status in the wider galaxy forever." A new display activated, showing official correspondence from the highest levels of galactic government. "Earth is hereby recognized as a protected homeworld under the Galactic Accords. Human applicants will be actively recruited for all branches of the Defense Force, and this academy will establish a permanent exchange program to study and learn from human approaches to warfare and survival." The arena erupted in sounds that Marcus could not identify. Applause, maybe, or whatever passed for approval among dozens of different species. He looked out at the sea of alien faces and saw something he had never expected to see. Respect, not pity, not curiosity, not amusement at the weak species that had somehow stumbled onto the galactic stage. Respect. Vorath raised one massive arm for silence. "Let the record show that on this day, the Galactic Warrior Academy learned something new, something that no amount of study or preparation could have taught us. We learned to never underestimate humanity." He looked at Marcus one final time. "Welcome to the galactic community, Terran. I suspect your species will make quite an impact." That night, Marcus stood alone on an observation platform, watching the stars spread across the alien sky. Behind him, he could hear the sounds of celebration from the barracks. Students from species that had doubted him, mocked him, and dismissed him as weak were now eager to talk with him, to understand how he had achieved the impossible. Kira appeared beside him, her silver fur catching the starlight. "You know this changes everything," she said. "Not just for you, for your entire species." Marcus nodded. "I know. Are humans ready for that? Ready to be part of something so much larger than your single world?" He thought about the question for a long time before answering. He thought about human history, all the wars and conflicts, all the terrible things humans had done to each other. But he also thought about the other side of that history, the moments of courage and sacrifice, the times when humans had come together against impossible odds, the stubborn refusal to stay defeated that had carried his species through ice ages and disasters and countless other existential threats. "I do not know if we are ready," he finally admitted, "but I know we will not give up trying to be. That is who we are. We face challenges, we struggle, We fail. And then we get back up and try again. It is not elegant, it is not efficient, but it is human. Kira made a sound that might have been laughter. You make your species sound like a force of nature. Marcus smiled slightly. Maybe we are. Maybe that is what the galaxy has never understood about us. We are not just another intelligent species trying to find our place in the stars. We are something different. Something that does not accept limits, does not recognize impossible, and absolutely refuses to quit. He looked up at the countless stars, each one representing worlds he might someday visit, species he might someday meet. The Academy asked what makes humans special. Today I gave them one answer. But the truth is, we are just getting started. What humanity showed here is only a tiny fraction of what we are capable of when we truly have something to fight for. And what will humans fight for? Marcus considered the question. Everything. Ourselves, our friends, our future. Whatever we believe in. That is the thing about humans. Once we decide something matters, we do not stop. Ever. Kira was quiet for a moment. That sounds terrifying. For our enemies? Yes. For our friends? Marcus turned to look at her with a warm expression. For our friends. We are the best allies anyone could ask for. Somewhere in the distance, a new day was beginning on Volantis Prime. Marcus Cole, the first human to attend the Galactic Warrior Academy, watched the light spread across the alien landscape and thought about what came next. The galaxy had finally noticed humanity. And nothing would ever be the same.